Welcome to Busted Knees and Pretty Trees. Thanks for coming along. As always, we're happy to have you. Our digital through hike to 100 eps continues unabated. The Busted Pretty crew is getting antsy with excitement for our coming milestone, but we mustn't get ahead of ourselves. We still have plenty to do before we toss our packs aside and rest our weary hearts at the nearest Waffle House. Brad said there's only a short 8 episodes left, but we all know how his estimates pan out. 8 turns to 10, 10 turns to 17, you know. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. We're on the trail with all of you, and there's no other place we would rather be. Busted Knees and Pretty Trees has been fortunate enough to feature some of the most knowledgeable and passionate people in the field of conservation and park development. But there's one particular professional we've been dying to get a chance to chew the fat with. Today is that day. 90s kids, it's morphin' time. No, we did not book a holographic Zordon on the show.
Nice.
He hasn't responded to Patty's emails. Today's guest, United Rangers, long before Zordon volunteered some teens to save us from Rita Repulsa. He is one of the most, if not the most ardent and strongest voices fighting for our parks and park service employees to this day. We got him, so stick around. The boys and I couldn't be more thrilled for this interview. I'm Travis J. White. You already know Patrick Richardson and, of course, Bradley Greer. Are you guys stoked for this interview or what?
Unbelievably. I couldn't stop talking before we started recording, so I can't wait to actually start recording so we can get to the shit of this.
Yeah. Let's do it. Our guest today grew up in Mesa Verde National Park. He began his career as a park ranger in Mount Rainier National Park. And after a storied career in the Park Service, he quote-unquote retired in 1997. It seems you can take the ranger out of the park, but you can't take the park out of the ranger. He continues to carry the torch to this day, serving as the executive director of the Association of National Park Rangers, the Park Service's Megazord, if you will. Please welcome Park Service brat, Bill Wade.
Yes. Yes.
Bill, thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this, especially after that illustrious introduction.
Man, he
Illustrious.
does so good. He does so good. Bill, we are unbelievably happy to have you. Go ahead, Travis, but we are unbelievably happy.
Yeah. Well, I also wanted to mention that you brought the Rangers together among the Association of National Park Rangers, but you also were a co-founder and a past council member of the Coalition to Protect America's National Parks.
That's correct. I joined the Association of National Park Rangers in 1978, which was the second year that it was in effect. And I served in various capacities and positions and so forth. And then in the early 2000s, when we were actually experiencing some difficulties with the people in Interior at the time, Gail Norton and our director, Fran Manella, several of us were called on to do a press conference in Washington, D.C. to talk about what was happening to the national parks and so forth under these, quote, leaders. And following that, the decision was to send a letter to then President Bush and to Gail Norton and get that letter signed on by as many National Park Service retirees as possible. Because at the time, much like now, there was fear of current employees speaking out in any way from retribution and so forth.
Yeah.
So retirees could do that. And lo and behold, the first iteration of the letter got like 65 retirees signed on. And so, that was a clue that retirees still wanted to stay involved. And so we floated the idea of starting an association or a coalition of National Park Service retirees. And a whole bunch of people signed on. And then later on, it was converted to the Coalition to Protect America's National Parks. But that was the genesis of that coalition. So I worked with that coalition for a while till it got set up. Then I decided it was time to get back to the Association of National Park Rangers because it needed some Band-Aids, I guess you would say. And so that's what I did. I came back in, ran for treasurer first, and then subsequently ended up as the executive director about 3 years ago. And that's the position I'm in now.
And the executive director role, that's a four-year role?
No, it's not. It's an appointed position. It serves at the leisure of the board and the president.
Okay.
So I committed basically to stay in the position through our association's 50th anniversary, which is actually next year.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
And we'll see what happens after that.
Okay, right on. Does anybody have any other opening questions before we take a second and then get into the nitty gritties?
I really want to get into what was going on in 2001, but I don't know if we'll have time for all that.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to. There's
other than what was obviously going on in 2001.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think before we get into the nitty gritty of your service to the national parks and our beautiful country, we always kind of ask our guests you were essentially just born into the national park system. So it's in your blood. Your father was a park ranger. I imagine your dad left a very big impression on you and the environment that you were in. But what ultimately just kept you going back to the national parks and, dedicate your entire life to it?
Well, as it turned out, I had absolutely no intention of making the Park Service a career when I was growing up. Mm-hmm. I went to a military school. I got ROTC. I went into the Army. My full expectation at the time was to make the Army a career. But after...
I saw you served a tour in Vietnam with the Army Corps of Engineers.
Yeah, and that wasn't the reason, but I just decided after being on active duty for a while that that's not what I really wanted to do. And then the question came to my mind, so if you're not going to do that, what are you going to do? And the natural answer seemed to be go into the Park Service. Mm-hmm. Again, interestingly enough, my parents never, ever talked to me about making the Park Service a career when I was growing up. I worked a number of summers, on an archaeological project at Mesa Verde. So I think it's accurate to use the analogy, that it did get into my DNA. And so when I decided not to stay in the Army, that was the obvious solution from that point on.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a nice transition, too.
That is.
How many different parks did you serve at? Started at Rainier?
I think the number is 10. And then in addition to that, I have had international assignments to a number of countries, including Greece, New Zealand, Trinidad and Tobago, Russia, and most recently Thailand, where a group of 3 of us have now been over there 4 years in a row, and we're about to make our 5th trip over there to train New Zealand managers of protected areas in leadership and park protection management. So that's the kind of the list of my involvements over the years, some of which took place, of course, while I was an employee, and others since I've retired.
That's
Good
one
Lord.
thing I didn't realize until I looked through your resume, is how much we're influencing other countries' parks and their, systems, which is really cool. Because, that must mean we really have something people would love to have, where they live.
Well, that's true. And the National Park Service, for years up until recently, has had a long-standing involvement with, counseling and providing advice and assistance and so forth with the national parks in other countries. And so a lot of us spent time doing various projects in the national parks of other countries, because we know that Yellowstone National Park, which was our first national park, and basically the world's first national park, sort of served as a standard for the development of national parks in many other countries.
Yeah.
So, it's been a follow-up to our National Park Service to be able to provide continuing advice and assistance to parks in other countries.
Now, when I travel lately and for next year and this year, going to a national park internationally, but then hitting one or two in the U.S. too. And it's cool always seeing the differences and the similarities between international ones and the U.S. ones.
Yeah.
Well, many countries, of course, have taken the Yellowstone and our National Park Service model and, carried it through to their country. But it's also been interesting to see that some of the other countries, because of their context, have actually taken it in slightly different directions. And I'll use an example with the UK. Many of their national parks that they've established over the years continue to have, some of the people that lived there and worked there and did various kinds of things as part of the park. They've melded that into the national park system. Whereas, as you know, most of our national parks, when they were established, residents of that area or whatever were bought out and moved out.
Yeah.
And so I'm happy to see that, some countries didn't just actually completely model after our parks, but have, established a different way of managing their parks, sometimes to include the people who lived there originally and worked there originally. And I think that's been a positive involvement.
Yeah, I kind of like that. They make it their own and they do it the way that makes sense for them. And maybe they even in some ways kind of pick the good stuff out of how we did it in the beginning and left kind of the bad stuff.
Do you ever bring anything back from them that you think would be better to implement in our American national park system?
Yeah. There's been a number of things that I learned in New Zealand, for instance, when I was over there, about how they manage their national parks. One of the things that struck me when I was over there, for instance, was that they have at least one, if not more, what they call one-way tracks or trails, the Milford Sound. And I was lucky enough to do that trip. And what that involves is you get on the trail at the beginning and you go for 3 nights and stay in huts. And so you see other people in those huts. But during the day, because everybody's going the same direction, you almost never see anybody else.
Yeah.
So you get that feeling of just absolutely being one with the resource. And so, I'm going to
write that down.
I thought about that, how we would implement that in the U.S., because I think it's a great idea. And unfortunately, I think in most national parks, the precedent was already established for those trail systems. And so, you come up with ideas, some of which you can implement, probably not all of them.
Yeah.
I like that from a backpacking route, because that's one of the big decisions is which way you're going to go.
Yeah.
It's already made for you.
Yeah. I get it now. That is awesome. I like this idea. Is there a chance, as like New River Gorge is one of the newer national parks, as national parks are maybe not with this administration, but later on, if we start getting more and more land put aside for national parks, do you think there's an opportunity to maybe like trial run a certain trail like that? Or like, you know what I'm saying? Like the future?
I suppose so. I mean, who knows what national parks are going to be established after this at some point? Probably not during the current time, but One other really good example I will quickly share with you. We spent some time in several national parks in Australia while I was in New Zealand on just a vacation trip. And I went to one campground where we stayed, and I noticed that it was just absolutely the cleanest campground that I'd ever been in. I mean, I wandered around in there. I didn't see a speck of trash.
Wow.
And so I was wondering what happened. So I went to the booth and talked to the ranger. What they did was when campers checked in and had children, they would give them a trash bag. And if that child brought that trash bag back to the office with trash in it, they would give them the opportunity to select from about 5 or 6 really beautiful posters that depicted the various wildlife or insects or flowers or whatever. That was their reward for wandering around the campground picking up trash.
That's a brilliant
What a great idea.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I would do that.
Me too.
Yeah, I'd fill it up.
I collect posters from every national park I go to, and if somebody was like pick up a gallons or a trash bag full of trash, I would be out there.
That at Shenandoah. It didn't get off the ground very well for various reasons, but I just thought it was another one of those brilliant ideas that somebody came up with. And, the results were obvious.
Yeah.
There was I guess the most notable leave no trace violation I've ever seen. Well, other than just really bad going to the bathroom stuff, which that's about a problem everywhere, but just kids dropping their little candies,
Oh, yeah.
walking on the trail. I remember just following a trail of gummy bears through the Death Canyon in the Tetons. Well, no wonder there's bears all around it.
Yeah, there's unfortunately a lot of park visitors that still don't get the word, or they still don't understand the value of that sort of thing. And, that's what rangers do these days, is try to educate the public and visitors, among other things, to leave no trace.
Yeah.
And don't touch the bison.
Yeah, Lord have mercy.
Leave the bison
do not
alone.
touch the bison or approach them in any way.
Or
All right.
do it.
You guys ready to get into this? Let's take a break, get into it.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. All right, let's take a break, and then we'll get back into it with Mr. Bill Wade.
I'll be here.
Alrighty.
All right. We are back with Mr. Bill Wade, Executive Director of ANPR, volunteer for all kinds of things, been to multiple countries to help with national parks. And I have kind of one first softball question that I'm curious about, because we've been talking about the mixture of National Park Service and the National Park System. And I had questions going back and watching some of your stuff. So could you just quickly, or not so quickly if you want, explain the difference between the National Park System and the National Park Service?
Well, the system is all of the different sites that the National Park Service administers under the Organic Act. And I think there are something like 463 different areas now, many of which go with different titles. In fact, I think at one point I counted about 20 different titles that could be attributed to the areas that the National Park Service administered, which is certainly confusing, probably, to the number of visitors and people.
I feel like I always come across a new one.
Yeah, that's right. So the system consists of the areas that the National Park Service administers. The National Park Service is the federal agency under the Department of the Interior that administers all of those areas.
Okay, nice. I watched something a while ago with you, and Brad, you kind of make a point, and Bill talked about this. Is there a reason why it won't fall under a national park? For instance, we live in Indiana, and we have the Indiana Dunes National Lakeshore, right? Is that what it is?
It's now a national
park.
Yeah.
Shit, sorry. Is there a reason why they all don't fall under a national park? Why we have monuments?
Hoosier National Forest.
Yeah.
It has to do with two things. One is that national monuments can be established by designation from a president under the Antiquities Act. Okay. So, and also the Secretary of the Interior can designate a national monument, although that's fairly rare. But
would that be like a Mount Rushmore or the Arch or?
No, I'm really talking about those that have the specific title of national monument.
Okay.
Yep.
Like Devil's Tower National Monument.
Okay.
All right. All of those other areas that have all of those other different titles are established by an act of Congress. Only Congress can designate or can establish a national park. Only Congress can establish a national lakeshore. Only Congress can establish a national historic site.
Anything with national in front of it?
Whatever designation they choose to use when they establish that area is the title that area gets stuck with.
And
wow.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but does it nowadays mostly you have some kind of designation prior to being a national park? Like right now, they're trying to get the Ocmulgee Mounds through, right? And that's a national historic park. So is it normally, like, I think that it was Indiana National Lakeshore or whatever before it was Indiana Dunes National Park.
Well, yes, to some extent. But remember that sites that are established by the Congress as a component of the national park system most often are generated by members of Congress who have some area in their district that they would like to have designated as a national park, whatever. Right. And so that's often the way it gets done, so that the member of Congress will, introduce a bill to establish such and so in their district, assuming that that's probably going to help the economic conditions and all kinds of other reasons that they might bring to the table. At the same time, the National Park Service is required to keep a list of potential areas that might at some point, be considered part of the system. And they do studies of those areas to determine whether or not they meet certain criteria that might make them eligible to be established as part of the national park system. So it's a fairly convoluted process about how an area can be included.
I'm sure it can go about many different ways, but is there sort of like an evolution to it where, the state or the municipality decide like this is beautiful, we'll protect it. And then the state decides they'll protect it. And now we want to make it national.
Yep. Sometimes that's exactly the case. Other times sometimes things just almost come out of the ether zone, and somebody, puts an idea forward and it gets traction, and all of a sudden Congress approves it. So it can happen any number of different ways.
I want that list of potentials that they're keeping. That's probably the spots to go visit right now.
No kidding. Yeah. No kidding.
So, yeah.
All right. So I want to get back to the National Park Rangers, the Association of National Park Rangers, and just National Park Rangers overall. So I'm sure many people listening right now are pretty familiar with National Park Rangers, considering they're one of the staples of all national parks. They're something that are readily available or recognizable.
They're iconic.
But fewer probably understand the ANPR, or the Association of National Parks Rangers. So as executive director of this program, could you explain maybe the mission of the ANPR and then what your role is within it?
Well, the very short answer to the mission of ANPR is that it's in business to support the National Park Service and the National Park System where it's appropriate to do so, and to support the employees of the National Park Service.
And this was you originally established because there really wasn't a way for all of these rangers at the different parks to communicate their problems to each other. There just really was nobody to go to. So, like I mentioned in the intro, like you brought the rangers together to form this more powerful entity, the Megazord, and now you can push for, you know, more fair working and, you know, whatever.
Yeah, the sort of genesis of ANPR started in 1977 when a group of 32 rangers from primarily Yellowstone, Yosemite, a few other places, late in the fall after a busy summer, decided to get together over a 3-day weekend and just kind of visit and tell stories and drink beer. Probably more emphasis on the latter.
Yes,
Well, out of that discussion came the idea of developing an association so that they could continue to do that. And, oh, by the way, while we're doing that, maybe we can figure out some ways to help the employees and help the National Park Service where it's appropriate. And so that's how the whole thing got started, you know, first of all in 1977 and how it's evolved. For the longest period of time, the association, which is a 501c3 nonprofit, was not in the business of advocacy. It was more supporting and educating. Okay. And, you know, we put on an annual conference. We put out a quarterly magazine to inform people and educate people. More recently, of course, in the last year plus, we have become much more advocacy oriented because of what we are seeing in terms of the threats and the stresses that the current administration is foisting on the National Park Service and the employees of the National Park Service.
Has there been
we have decided over time to become more involved with advocacy and dealing with media relations and responding to that sort of thing than we ever had in the past.
Yeah.
And I think it's appropriate to the situation, to the current situation.
Where the need arises, you guys are filling that void and allowing to take some of that pressure off the rangers themselves or other organizations to kind of do what they need to do while you guys handle press and other things. That's probably why when I look at in your history, I don't really see a lot of press or anything up until the last couple years, maybe, and then it's just like you're being asked to be on all the different news programs and make statements and answer some questions.
So you just had an opinion piece on the Denver Post, I think, in the last couple of days.
Nice.
But I'm blocked. I'm behind a paywall, so I can't read it.
Son of a shit. Hey, so you kind of you mentioned just how, or Travis, I guess, did, and then you were alluding to it, how you wanted to kind of bring the voices together of all these national parks rangers. And I know that there's hundreds, thousands of national parks rangers in this country. So how do you kind of listen to not each individual ranger, I'm sure, but like, how do you kind of go from these groups of rangers and then collectively kind of leverage those conversations into, this is how we should go forward. This is what we should be doing for the future or whatever.
Well, I think most recently it's been maybe more listening to what's happening from the administration. In other words, the things that the administration is doing that are either affecting the national parks and the National Park Service mission, and then also affecting indirectly, perhaps in some cases, more directly in others, the employees. And so there's been a whole series of things that the administration has done since February of 2025. It's just like one thing gets heaped on to another, and so that's what we've mostly been paying attention to, because we know that those are the things that are not only affecting the National Park Service and the system, but also affecting the employees. So that's what we're responding to as much or more than anything else.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a common thread throughout these questions is that you might have done stuff different. If we had the conversation 3 years ago or so, the conversation would look different than right now. At current state, a lot of these answers there's going to be a skew towards what's going on currently in this country. So, I mean, that makes perfect sense. We definitely pay attention through this podcast and just our natural wonders and curiosities. We pay attention to what's going on in the national park systems and the National Park Service. And it is, it's a bit terrifying. I do have a few questions at the end of this that kind of get a little bit more personal and opinionated to your experience in sending out a message to not only our listeners, but potentially policymakers and others. But I won't get into the hard stuff yet.
Okay.
I'll stick with the overarching and easy stuff. Let's keep it light for now. So you can correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but the ANPR serves current rangers, retired rangers, policymakers, partners, and the public. And as far as I understand it, I have 6 people that I kind of manage at work, and I couldn't imagine being the executive director of an organization that has all of those sorts of people under your umbrella. So what I'm curious about is kind of how you balance, how the ANPR balances the interests and sort of expectations of such diverse stakeholders.
Well, I guess the answer is a couple of ways. One is we do everything we can to listen to our members, and we get input from the members. However, with regard to what's happening to the national parks and to the employees, members now are very reluctant, current members who are currently employees are very reluctant to speak out in any way, shape, or form. They have been threatened by retribution and disciplinary action. And so it's very difficult, not only for anybody in the media to get information from current employees, because they just have simply been ordered not to respond to questions on policy and staffing and budget and all of those kinds of things. We can't even get information from those members. Wow. So basically what that leaves us to do is to really pay attention to what's coming down the line from the administration that we know, number one, is affecting national parks, and number two, affecting employees. And so that's basically what we have now ended up having to respond to.
This is your major battle as of right now.
Right.
That's right. And you know, there's been so many of those things that have come down. And in doing that, I think we are meeting the needs and what the current employees and members of ANPR hope that we are helping with. And every evidence that we have so far, indirectly or whatever, you know, suggests that we're doing the right thing.
Man, I have to imagine, too, that if you're a ranger right now or in your guys' organization and being kind of muffled and told to stay silent for fear of retribution, that any sort of help and any sort of like, hey, we got your back is probably met with just the utmost enthusiasm. Like, thank God somebody is out here looking out for us and what we need and our safety and our day-to-day activities. So it really probably is for any ranger in the park system right now or service right now it's got to be a breath of fresh air because it seems like they're just being hit from every side, you know.
They are, and there's just a tremendous amount of frustration and anger about what's happening and what's coming down, not only that's affecting employees themselves, but affecting the parks that they work in and the functions that, you know, they have taken pride in being able to do and to deliver effectively over the last few years. And so we know that, you know, they appreciate what we're doing. We're not the only organization, of course, that's doing that. We work very closely with National Parks Conservation Association, which has much the same mission, so to speak, than we do. and of course the coalition of National Park, Coalition to Protect National Parks. And so we're doing more and more to try to work together to not only support the parks, but to support the employees.
Wonderful. Lord knows, I think they need it. I know I'm going to ask this question. I already kind of know the answer. So I'm curious, kind of going backwards, like if we weren't dealing with this administration, what your answer would be. I think you guys, the ANPR is viewed as one of the strongest voices for the ranger profession across the board. That's what I've read. It just all signs point to you guys are kind of the first and the strongest, loudest. So how do you determine if everything's right in the administration? How would you guys determine which issues, what trails to build, whatever's going on, deserve the ANPR's kind of attention and advocacy? Or even now, I guess we could take that now. Like, where do you guys decide to put your advocacy?
Well, I think what's most important is that we need to make sure that the American public understands what the value of parks are, and I think they do largely.
Yeah.
There have been surveys done, I can remember over the last, 3 or 4 decades, that asks the American public, what is your favorite federal agency?
Oh, yeah.
And every one of those surveys that I've ever seen
IRS.
Park Service at the top.
Yeah.
By a fairly good margin. And so we know, for 2 reasons. We know that that the American public appreciates parks. They also, express that because visitation to parks is continuing to increase every year. So what they don't understand, it seems like, is what the impacts are of these kinds of, stresses that are being foisted on national parks and the employees right now. And so I think until the public understands that sufficiently enough that they can go to will go to their elected representatives and insist that some of this stuff that's going on that's affecting national parks, the mission of parks, actually, the actual carrying out of activities in parks that's being impacted. Until the American public realizes that and does something about it, we're going to continue to have the problems. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to do right now, is to increase public awareness of all of this, so that, because I don't think, number one, the administration's not going to do anything about it right now. The Congress doesn't seem to have an appetite to do anything about it right now. And so it's only going to happen if there's pressure enough from the American publics to insist through their elected representatives to try to turn some of this around.
I've noticed ever since we've started this podcast, I'm always trying to stay up to date on what's happening around the country with our parks and all that stuff. And the one thing I always find is there's you don't really have politics, among the American people when it comes to our national parks. We all love it. We all want it to remain, and we want it to get better. We want all Americans and the rest of the world to be able to come and enjoy it. Because I'm proud of it. I'm proud to be in America. I'm proud of the beautiful things that we have in this country. And I don't care who's our president or whatever. We need to make sure that future generations can enjoy it just as much as we have been able to.
Yeah.
Preach, brother. Preach.
Yep.
Totally agree. On this idea of national parks visitors, I watched something with you not that long ago, and I found it curious because you were discussing the website traffic and online traffic to national parks. And you were trying to kind of talk about how we generally measure national parks visitation by way of who shows up at the gate, who pays the $35 entrance fee, and then goes in and does whatever. And I found it kind of interesting that you were saying that at the Grand Canyon, somebody will pay the $35 fee, walk up, take a photo, not really do anything else, and then leave the park, where somebody online might spend 2 or 3 hours diving into the history and the stories and everything that the online site for the national park has. And have you got any traction there at all? Because I found that exceptionally interesting. And the numbers would go up significantly. And I imagine maybe that would also push like a bit of an upgrade in the internet sphere. I don't know anything about tech, Bill, but like the internet sphere of visitation.
Well, like real quick to piggyback, not only that, like every single March, February, us all logging on to recreation.gov, trying to get permits to parks, backcountry permits.
Yep.
And then in doing so, looking up the park itself, the trails, the backcountry campsites, every year trying to get permits.
Yeah, it's a struggle.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, the way the National Park Service reports its visitation, I think, is technologically antiquated. In other words, as you said, they only record those people who drive into the park, regardless of how long they stay. And those are that's considered the visitation.
That's one visit. Even if you stay for 5 days or 1 day.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's 5 people or whatever.
Yeah.
But the fact is that there are far many more people who visit the national parks online. And I think, and I've tried to advocate unsuccessfully so far, and I'm not sure how you would do it technologically.
That's for somebody else.
But visitation to parks ought to include all of those inputs and all of those, people who, many of whom I think go online, visit a particular national park, learn about that national park, probably much more about that national park than if they went there and visited it.
Yeah.
So I think the whole, visitation process is skewed to a limitation that's not at all realistic.
Yeah, I found that really interesting because as I was watching that, I've never really considered that. And I am also one that'll spend hours upon hours and days out of the year on national park websites or associated websites telling me what to expect or all the cool stuff about the park, because I want to learn as much as I can about the park before I go. So then I'm like, oh my Lord, that's an old cypress tree or whatever it might be. And I'm with you. I think that is quite interesting. That was a cool point of view you had.
I agree. That's really cool. And very valid. Very valid.
So you said that you kind of volunteered at the beginning of the conversation. You said you kind of volunteered your service until the 50-year anniversary of the ANPR, which is next year. So that hypothetically means your service as executive director might be over at that point, and we'd be sad to see you leave. But I'm curious.
He's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I hope not. And that passion's a hell of a son of a bitch. But I'm curious because I think anybody at the end of their reign of anything sits back and they want to measure in terms of success and failure, and they want to look back on it fondly in some regard. So do you have you been thinking about, as your term might be coming to an end, how you're going to define your success in this role?
To some extent. I think it's safe to say that one way or another, I'm going to continue to do something affiliated with national parks as long as I'm vertical.
Yeah.
And what that turns out to be, I don't know. As you said, I sort of said that I would do this job until the end of next year. It might be beyond that. I've not given that a lot of different thought. But I do think that some of the things that I've succeeded in doing so far over the last year and a half or more, number one is calling attention which we've never done before as an association, to what's happening to the national parks and employees. And, dealing with all of these things that have come down the line from the administration and responding to, the result of that, coincidentally and not necessarily planned, was responding to the multitude of media requests that have come down the line since then. I wish I'd kept track of each of those.
It's a lot.
I estimated at the end of last year that it was well over 400 or 500 different media requests that I responded to. So that's one thing, because I think getting the word out again through the media to the American public is the only thing that's going to turn this whole thing around.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what do you think, the number one thing you can do to, to help? And I think you just said it. Just make sure the American people know what's going on.
Everything I do, every media request that I take, I sort of end that with a request that, they make sure to say that the only thing that's going to turn this around is if the American public and people in this country get angry enough, maybe, or frustrated enough to contact their elected representatives and insist on some changes. The other thing I think that I would list as being an accomplishment is, and I think the two are sort of connected, is that we've been very successful at raising a significantly amount more money in the association beyond just membership dues. And by the way, we changed the membership criteria to say that we're not charging any membership dues right now. Anybody can join ANPR for free and become a member.
Here we go.
And
man, you heard it, listeners. Join up.
Hit the join button.
Yeah, exactly. ANPR.org/join.
There we go.
And as a result of that, we have had a lot more donations and mostly toward, number one, continuing the advocacy. That's number one for donations. Mm-hmm. Number two is we have received a lot of donations toward what we're now calling a Ranger Emergency Relief Fund. And that fund is originally was designed to provide some monetary assistance to people who might have been affected by some natural disaster.
Okay.
Or employees.
Yeah.
Right.
That might have been affected by a natural disaster like a hurricane or a forest fire. Yeah. We've since expanded that to include people who have been affected by some kind of position displacement.
That's a nice way to say getting fired from the administration.
Of, something that the administration has done.
Right.
And so we now have this fund that if people have been affected by being laid off early or getting charged, some, whatever it is, we will accept consideration or an application for grant money that might help them. And the only requirement is they have to be a member of ANPR.
That's amazing.
We'll consider an application.
Absolutely amazing. I just watched a program with a gentleman that moved from Colorado out to Wyoming for a national park ranger spot. He was there for 2 weeks and got laid off because of this, or fired because of this. And they sold their house. They sold all their belongings. The wife wasn't working. They just got absolutely blindsided by getting rid of. This was his career goal. You know what I mean? And got blindsided. It's just another wonderful thing that somebody's being supportive of these individuals that are facing a real tough time.
I think I know that person that you're talking about. And that was one of the very early grants that we made to that person to help cover some of those expenses that they incurred. Number one, moving back and forth, and
right.
Never got reimbursed for any of it by the government, of course. So
nope.
Yeah.
Nope, that's right.
I was wondering, like, because I know because of when we went through the COVID period, a lot of people in this country decided this is a great time for me to go outside and explore the world. And it seems like ever since then, the numbers at our national parks and everywhere have just been going up. Do you think that that COVID period of time is sort of maybe a blessing in disguise in terms of support for national parks, because there's just so many people that have experienced it and are now aware of all of it?
You know, I don't know the answer to that question. I do know that COVID, resulted in a lot more people not being able to make international travel.
Yeah.
Right.
And so as a result, many of them tended to decide, okay, if we're going to take a trip, we'll go to, 2 or 3 national parks in this country. And so in that sense, I think it really probably increased, at least for many people, their knowledge and their understanding of national parks. Whether that really included or increased their knowledge about what was happening in national parks, I just don't know.
Yeah. No, there sure seemed to be an uptick in visitors there. On the trend of kind of evolving challenges, from workforce issues to climate impacts, I'm sure in some regards you guys are dealing with climate impacts right now. Once again, this is kind of another question that I kind of feel dumb reading because I know the answer to this. Has your role as executive director changed over the years in response to these issues? And
what kind of,
yes, the answer is yes.
First became executive director. What sort, before any of where we are currently, what kind of issues were you dealing with?
Well, my job at the time I took the job on was to manage our association business manager, who keeps track of the finances and the website and a number of other things, and who also is the person who publishes our quarterly magazine. So my job was to basically manage her.
Is that Ranger magazine?
Pardon?
Is that the Ranger magazine? Is that what it's called? Yeah.
Yes. Ranger magazine, which has been in effect since I think the early or the late 70s. It's a very well put together, very well published magazine. So anyway, my job was to oversee her and to kind of just, run the organization, keep track of the board and issues and so forth. And it all changed. Basically, I will even pin it down to a date.
All right.
Do it.
February 14th, 2025, the infamous Valentine's Day Massacre.
Oh,
yeah.
We call it, which is when the 1,000 probationary employees were just arbitrarily and capriciously terminated. That's the point when at least I determined and was put in the position of sort of being much more involved in the advocacy responsibilities than just kind of maintaining the organization, in its normal activities and functions.
When the tough gets going, the going get tough. And I feel like from the ANPR's point of view, at least knowing you now a little bit more, I imagine that there's a sense of honor and duty of these are my brethren. We got to do whatever we can to protect it. And that's shifting our mission to advocacy, support, anything you can do to make sure that we can withhold and withstand what's going on right now.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly true. As I said, for years, decades, ANPR was not an advocacy organization. And we I would say, almost violently resisted the idea that we were any kind of a union, which we're still not, and still would advocate against that in terms of our own involvement. But it seemed clear that because of all of the things that were being foisted on the Park Service and employees, we needed to change and become more advocacy oriented than we'd ever been in the past.
Absolutely. Absolutely understand. I have one more softball for you, and this is just because I'm utterly curious, and then we'll get more into the kind of the hardball questions. But after working with rangers all over the world in all those different countries, kind of setting up and being an advocate for their national park systems, and working with rangers all over the country here, what I'm curious about, and this is more like, what common traits do you see in parks rangers? And I don't mean that to be a simple question, because what I'm referring to is the amount of work that a park ranger does, from education, not just adult education, but youth education, tours, hiking tours, maintaining the parks, cleaning up the parks, building trails. I mean, good Lord, when you think about a ranger, I don't think you really comprehend the amount of stuff that a park ranger does for the national park system. So I'm just curious, as like, in your experience, what do you find to be the best, or the how do I have it written? Yeah, like most effective common traits.
What makes a good,
of a National Parks Ranger? Yeah.
Well, my experience, not only in this country, but in all of the other countries that I've either visited or worked in or provided some consultation to, I think to sort of put it maybe down to one trait or one thing that rangers generally take pride in, it's providing service to the visitors of those parks and making sure that the resources of those parks are protected to the best capability possible. And I think that summary of what rangers believe is most important, in my opinion, has probably started, at least in our country, as early as 1916, when the National Park Service was established and rangers started to be hired to manage the parks. I think that's what's prevailed and persisted and has been exported, or at least inherited, by national parks in most other countries.
It's so I hate to use the word inspirational again, but I'm 41. I've been in careers paths. I've been in multiple different sorts of businesses, and in any place I've been, you have this person, like, I've worked in kitchens and they really love cooking, but they absolutely despise people. I've worked now, I run inventory, and they're really passionate all across the board. I'm not just talking about inventory, but you'll find somebody that's super passionate about one thing, but they couldn't care less about the other thing. So I think, like, the reason, as I was kind of forming this question, one of the thoughts I was having is I imagine that to want to get into the National Park Ranger sphere, you love nature to your core. You want to be a part of that. And so I can imagine that it doesn't seem like it's much at all that these people want to go out there to protect nature, but Jesus, do I really have to educate people for real? Like, I don't want to do that. I just want to protect
just give
nature.
Me a shovel and let me go make the trails better.
Right.
That'd be
right.
my...
But that just doesn't seem how it is. It's like they love nature. They love their parks so much that they just want to tell you about it and educate you. And it's so cool to find this multifaceted, like, every ranger I've ever had a conversation with has just been so willing to stop what they're doing and talk with you or my son and be a part of my experience at that park. It's just different. It's different. I don't know why I went on that tangent.
I'm gonna take issue with your limited definition.
Okay.
Because national parks, to use the broad terminology, are not only involved with nature protection, but think of all of the history and culture. In fact, the majority of National Park Service areas have to do with history, archaeology, those sorts of things. But
True.
given that, the term that you use that I think drives rangers in all of those different settings and areas is passion.
Yep.
I think that passion drives most of the people who are really involved with national parks. When I came on duty, back in 1967, the big story was, or the big joke was, that we got paid in sunsets.
Oh, man. That's awesome.
That's not a joke. That's
What that meant was that we weren't in the business of making money as rangers.
Right.
And we understood that we were going to get paid probably far less than some, positions in the private sector or whatever. But that passion was what was involved, why we wanted to do what we did. And I think that same passion is really what's prevalent in at least most rangers today, not only in this country, but in all of the other countries where that have rangers. That's whether you call that's in their DNA or whatever, I don't know, but it's there.
Yeah,
It
wasn't it?
Seems so.
Wasn't it the very first park rangers were the Buffalo Soldiers protecting Yosemite and Kings Canyon?
Yep.
Like
absolutely.
That was the first thing: protect them from poaching, protect the land.
Absolutely. Or go back to what we often refer to as the very first ranger, which was a guy by the name of Harry Yount, who was in the Army and was sent to Yellowstone after it was determined to be important and protected from poachers and everything back in the 1870s. So
totally random, how did Aldo Leopold, because didn't he kind of start the Forest Service?
Well, I think it was Gifford Pinchot that actually was instrumental in establishing a lot of but Aldo Leopold, there have been people along the way who have been really influential, not only in terms of the establishment part. Yeah, John Muir.
For president, John Muir for president.
All the way down to, people today who have made their individual marks, not only on individual parks, but the national park system as a whole. And, if it hadn't been for a lot of those people, it wouldn't be what it is today. And I can only say that the unfortunate situation that is causing deterioration and, whatever right now is just absolutely frustrating and angry. And, what can I say about it?
I'm glad we got back into that because I'm ready for my last three questions, and those are what I've been alluding to this whole time.
And I have one. I have one too. Eventually, too.
You want to do it now, Brad, or you want me to get into this?
Well, we did a story covering the America the Beautiful Act that's going to potentially extend the restoration fund that was made. Like it made it through the committee and went to the floor. And I haven't followed up to see if it's passed. But are you familiar with that bill? Like it's to address backlog maintenance in national parks. I didn't know if it was BS or like a legit.
The backlog maintenance issue has been a difficult issue for several decades now. I think it's now up to something like $24 billion.
Yeah, that's what I've read.
And what that means is that, and I think the National Park Service has done a pretty good job of trying to track what's going on with facilities, and things that they're responsible for, and determining what the cost is of bringing those facilities up to standard or whatever. And that number keeps increasing, and it's going to continue to increase until Congress decides to do something about it. They have made a few, attempts to mitigate some of that with a couple of bills over the last couple of years, but it's just not enough to really deal with what that number really is now.
Yeah.
And so the assumption is until they really decide to focus on that and do something about it, it's going to continue to increase.
Yeah, that's one of the things, because Patrick always gets upset with me because I'll bring a news story where there's good news, but then I say, but is that 1 or 2 billion or whatever that bill is, it's just a drop in the bucket. Like, it doesn't really handle a lot of it.
It'll help some things in some parks, and that was
some of the things that it was like it frees up funds to be able to do other things that they would have to use towards maintenance.
Something is.
I mean, every penny we get, or every penny the National Park Service gets, is important to get.
Yeah.
But when you look at the overall requirements and what the outcome of a continued deterioration of facilities, functions, ability to administer parks, manage parks, lead parks, the outlook is not really very good right now.
Right.
I get a nasty taste in my mouth when it's just gross.
Yeah, especially like every vacation we plan is based around a national park, basically.
Dude, not just us. It comes down to what Travis
ton of people
said. And I don't want to harp too much.
330 million people every year.
Right. And I don't want to harp too much, but it's just Travis, you said a long time ago that, and you just said it in this episode, that the national parks are this American thing. To the people, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you sit on. It just, like, the national park system is something that we all get behind and we all support. Yeah. I wonder, Bill, do you find that potentially there is kind of a complacency with the American people, that this is just the national park system is something that we expect to always be there, and that work is done no matter what? And it's like, no, dude, there's really no problem.
Out of sight, out of mind.
I'm just complacent. It's always been there. It's always going to be there. And do you find that people have that kind of perception? And then if they do, is that something that you and the ANPR are actively trying to counter?
I think you're absolutely correct. I think there is a significant degree of complacency, whether it's because there's not enough information going out about what's happening to the national park system, or whatever the reason. But, I think it is true that people, the people in this country are not getting involved enough in what's happening to the national parks. And that's the message that I keep, pushing out every chance that I get to do that. And I'm just not comfortable that we're making a lot of progress on that yet, but I'll keep pushing at it.
We'll help you as best we can.
We got your back, man. That's for sure. If you need any knees bitten, Brad's got you. That's for sure. I'm not even going to ask this. I guess. Okay, I will. What challenge facing the national park systems and the national park service, in your opinion, receives far too little attention from the public, despite potentially having enormous long-term consequences?
I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to answer your question with one word.
Good.
Ooh.
Burgum.
Doug Burgum.
And the reason I say that is because presumably the Secretary of the Interior has the overall responsibility for making sure that the national parks are administered according to the law. And we just simply have not seen that kind of support from Secretary of the Interior Burgum. Now, you can take it back to the next step above him, which of course is President Trump, and that he is simply carrying out the wishes of the administration and, the president, and naturally that's what his job probably is. But in terms of the way I look at it, I think his responsibility is to protect the national park system, to meet the laws that are in place to manage the national park system. And I just simply don't think he's doing that at all.
Listeners, if you're curious, there on the ANPR's website, there's a newsletter, I believe, written by you, Bill, saying, "Dear President, please give us a new Interior Secretary."
Yeah.
Right. And it was a pretty damn good newsletter. It was one of the ones that I printed out and took to work and read it a few times. Right now, I'm a little nervous, so I don't have it recited like I wanted to have it recited, but great newsletter. And listeners, if you want to see more of Bill's opinion on Doug Burgum, by all means, read this newsletter. It is quite good and well spoken or written. If you had 1 hour, let's say, I get you into a room 1 hour with all the policymakers that make policy pertaining to national park systems and the National Park Service. What message would you try to get through to them that they would take with them afterwards?
I would do everything I could to focus on the fact that the American public is passionate about their heritage, which for the most part is contained in the national park system, and to provide the specific information that would lead me to say to them, you need to make sure that you carry out the wishes of the American public in terms of protecting and budgeting and funding and properly administering their heritage, which is contained in the national park system.
That's an amazing message.
Or you're going to radicalize Travis, and that's going to be a problem for you.
Nobody wants to radicalize Travis. Dipshit number 2 will be all over him. All right, I got one last question before we get in the rapid fire questions, and bear with me while I read this, because as I was writing this, I just wanted to make sure I have, Bill, I tend to go, they call it Patty questions, where I explain about 5 minutes before I actually get to the question. This is part of it. You're experiencing it as I speak. As executive director, you sit at the intersection of conservation, public service, leadership, and now advocacy. Looking back on your tenure, which may or may not be coming to an end next year, where do you believe an organization like ANPR can have the greatest impact on the future of national parks? And where do you think it has the responsibility to be overly bold in this time?
I think the only thing that we can do is to continue to do everything that we can through every potential way of getting the American public informed about what's happening right now to the national park system and to the employees of the national parks, and implore to them that they are in a position to do something about that, and we want them to do that.
What I just have a follow-up then, because I'm sure we have listeners that are listening to what you're saying, and we've referenced the idea or the fact that the administration is doing stuff to the national park. Could you just quickly summarize to our listeners what is in fact happening to the national parks? I want to be sure that they're not hearing that something's going on. I want to be sure that they understand at least a summarized version of what is in fact going on.
I think the threats or the impacts to the national park system right now are greater than has ever been the case since the national park system was established in 1916. I think all of the things that have come down from the administration, some of which we don't understand yet, what their motivation is, what they're really trying to do or get to. But every one of the things that they have sort of foisted on the National Park Service right now, I think are threats that are unprecedented.
Okay.
And so I think, to the extent that the American public, is concerned about that and wants to do something about it, I think that's the only solution as we move ahead.
Basically, a call to action. We need the lovers of our national parks, everybody, to, have their say or donate to the right places or, spread the word.
Write your congressmen, write your senators, write your state representatives. Let them know that we, in fact, don't agree with what's going on and that we do want allocated resources to go to this national park system, so we can support that for future generations and then their future generations.
That's it in a nutshell.
Okay. The only thing I have left is 5 rapid fire questions. Bill, we started doing this. It kind of feels a little bit like we're turning the page away. Like I kind of do want to end it on the final message and the call to action. But we started doing this with a few of our conservation guests, and we just kept it going with our guests just because I feel like it's kind of fun and a good way to let our listeners know just a little bit more about you really quick. Unless Travis has more opinions than you do about your rapid fire questions, in which case this will last about another hour. Okay. Is it my turn, Brad and Travis, to ask the rapid fire questions? Have we done the full round robin?
Yep.
Okay, we're going to start with number 1. Are you ready, Bill?
Yep.
Okay. What is the biggest misconception Americans have about national parks?
I think the biggest misconception is that they assume that they're taking care of themselves, and because they go to national parks and they see what they probably saw last time they visited, they assume everything's okay. And that is simply not the case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Travis. I was waiting.
People shouldn't go in there being disconnected from it. You are connected to this, environment, and you need to
you
take
own
care
it.
of it. Yeah, you own it. Don't walk in and just, I don't know how to really say it, but you're part of it.
Take it for
You're
granted.
not in a bubble.
Yeah.
Right. Which experience from your ranger career has stayed with you the longest?
Well, I'm going to quickly try to give you 2.
Okay.
One is when I was working on the archaeological project in Mesa Verde National Park, as probably an 18 or 19-year-old, one of the things we did is we surveyed all of the archaeological sites along one mesa. And one of the cliff dwellings that we saw that we needed to survey was on a mesa that you could see from where we knew that the area was going to be developed. So we wanted to get information on that. So we went across and surveyed this little cliff dwelling, which was up in the sandstone, and determined that the way that the inhabitants got into that dwelling was along a ledge much of which since had slipped away. So, and it was about 30 feet above the tail slope, so we couldn't get into it from the bottom. And so the only solution was to rappel into it from the top.
Oh, hell yeah.
And it was my turn among the survey crew to do the rappelling. So, and what happened is there was a fairly significant lip above this particular dwelling. So we knew that when I went over in the rappel, I was going to be about 5 feet away from the floor of the dwelling. So I was going to have to do a little bit of a pendulum. So I got myself down there and I got ready to do the pendulum, and I looked in to this dwelling. And there, sitting on one of the walls of the cliff dwelling, were 2 whole Oya pots and a black and white gold.
Come on.
Wow.
Now,
untouched then, right?
That's
because you can
amazing.
imagine that
but
if somebody
that
was
did,
there.
I mean, you can imagine, it still does. It still raises the hair
I
on
just
my
raised
arms.
mine.
Because what I realized was I was the first person to set foot into that dwelling for probably 700 or 800 years.
Damn, that is
Because
insane.
if anybody else had gone into it,
They'd be gone.
those whole pots would not be there anymore.
Right.
So that
is amazing.
So that entrance must have fell out. Like that entrance must have
collected them because we knew that now that it was going to be identified as a place that people could look at, you know, we didn't want to leave those in there for other people to potentially take away.
Well, we've seen on the morning news where you see people going into, even I think it was down southwest where they had, it wasn't authentic artifacts, but it was made up to look, and people went in there and just knocked it over and destroyed it. And it's like,
that
what?
wasn't a morning show, Travis. That was the Busted Knees and Pretty Trees podcast.
Yeah, that was the news fantasy. That's the thing that you're a part of.
The other real quick memory, one of the things I think I'm most proud of actually is one of my assignments was at the Albright Training Center in Grand Canyon, Arizona. And I had been called into the superintendent's office and told that I had a budget of $10,000 to do a search and rescue training session. And so, you know, I looked around, decided what I needed to do. I knew that technical rescue in national parks like Rocky Mountain, Yosemite, Grand Teton, wherever, that was all pretty well taken care of. What we were not doing a very good job of is searching for lost people.
Oh, okay.
And there were ways of doing that were very antiquated and so forth. So I pretty quickly put together a training course called Managing the Search Function that has been duplicated, replicated. This was in 1974. And that course has proliferated, and who knows how many lives it's saved, because that was the essence of trying to, you know, develop a process of searching for lost people that was more effective, more efficient, and so forth, and the way we'd been doing it the old way. So those are the two things that come to my mind.
Amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. I'm telling you, Brad. I was telling Brad earlier, I am geeking out about you, Bill. I've been geeking out about you since for about a month now. And I'm like, every time we ask you a question, you say something like this guy, fuck.
I mean, those are the pueblos, like the Pueblo dwellings in the cliff that you were talking about earlier. Like, I want to go back. There's so many questions I have.
I don't know.
Yeah, there's like we
I know how to talk. I can talk.
We're gonna be your
We can figure it out.
600th. Damn right. All right. If you could solve one challenge facing the National Park Service tomorrow, what would that be?
You know, it's hard to get away from
Doug
the
Berger.
idea that there just has to be more funding to carry out the things that are going to meet the mission of the Park Service, to protect the resources and to provide for visitor enjoyment. I just don't see any way to get away from that.
What's your opinion?
Yeah.
I think they had where they changed what you pay to get in, and I don't know if it was foreigners had to pay.
Yeah,
to get in.
international. Yeah.
What's your opinion on that?
Well, if I was made king of the day, I would eliminate all entrance fees to national parks, because
Wow.
I think the American public deserves to be able to visit those areas that are part of their heritage without having to pay for it. They pay for it through their, through their
Stickers.
tax.
Yeah.
Oh,
And so all of these things that have been add-ons, like increased visitor fees and all of that, those have been put into place to try to supplement or augment the fact that the Congress is not doing its job in terms of allocating and appropriating sufficient funds to manage the national parks.
I agree.
We've talked pertaining to that. We've talked to a few hunting people through this podcast, kind of trying to bridge the gap between what Brad and Travis and I enjoy in the backpacking, hiking, and that kind of realm to hunting and fishing and angling. And what I think Brad also did a few News Panthers about the Dingle Johnson and the Pittman Robertson acts, where the money that is purchased through bullets, through tags for deer or whatever it is that the individual's hunting, that money goes straight into land conservation and other things, but mainly I believe land conservation. And we've had a few discussions. I don't know if we've ever discussed it on air, but where backpacking, I mean, I probably own thousands of dollars of gear at this point.
Yeah, that room you're sitting in right now is my gear room.
On
with
the other
thousands
on the
and
other side
thousands.
is a gear room, and
Yeah.
I have my own gear room, right? And we paid thousands of dollars of that, and none of that money for goes towards conservation and land management. And I've always been curious as to why backpackers, we spend so much time out in these areas, national parks specifically, and we, outside of paying the bill to get in the gate and then permits if it's needed, we don't really pay much into the conservation of the land that we take advantage of. And I just always find that curious, because Brad said it numerous times that if you were to put a certain percentage tax,
5%, 1%,
0.5%,
yeah.
1%, 2% even tax on all backpacking gear, I don't think that there would be a single backpacker that would fight
Look,
that.
I'm American. I don't like to pay taxes, but I would
that's
give a few
something.
dollars with my backpack, with my freeze dried meals. All those little things.
Yeah, all that stuff. I don't know.
All
It just,
titanium sporks.
it just seems curious as another way to be able to kind of raise
Yeah,
funds.
I think there are a number of different ways. And by the way, when I say I would prefer that there would be no entrance fees to national parks, I'm fine with user fees. I mean, if you're going to camp in the park, pay for the campsite. If you're going to go to, rent a houseboat on Glen Canyon National Recreation, pay for the houseboat.
Yeah.
I'm fine with the user fees. It's just that I think that, the ultimate thing would be, why do you have to pay when you're already paying through taxes to enter one of your premier heritage areas that are managed by the National
Just to
Park
simply walk in and enjoy the view. You shouldn't have to pay
Exactly. Or go to the
learn the history.
president's house, or whatever.
Whatever it is.
You should have to pay. So all of the efforts to increase those fees and all of that sort of thing to help offset the fact that Congress is not doing its job of appropriating enough money to manage the organization.
I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. Instead of doing the hard work, they're like, let's raise the price on people.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's see how that goes.
I'm just glad that I got my lifetime America the Beautiful pass a couple years ago, so I don't have Trump's face on my America the Beautiful pass.
And
I haven't got mine yet.
yeah, exactly.
I know we talked about this off air, but I'm hoping that this is worded better than asking you to name your favorite national park, because I don't want to put you out. But what is your most underrated national park?
Or one of.
One of. Thank you, Brad.
I think right now, one of the most underrated national parks or national park areas in this country is Chiricahua National Monument here in Arizona.
Whoa, I did not expect this. Brad, look it up.
Which in the process is, being promoted as a potential national park before Congress. And I guess I'm sort of biased because it's not too far from here, but it's also just a spectacular little national monument in southeast Arizona that isn't very, very well represented. And it deserves national park status.
Wow,
So
this is amazing.
Without a lot of thought to that question, I would put it way up there. I'm sure there are many others, but that, I guess, is what comes to my mind.
Wow,
Right?
That's a perfect one.
I know it's an amazing place when I see a photo and think that's got to be AI, right? That's not real.
No,
and it's PBS. It's got to be.
There are some spectacular formations there.
It's geologically very interesting.
It's not easy to get to, but
God, that's the best kind.
Well worth visiting.
Less people.
That looks amazing. Man, you've given me like 3 or 4 places. I gotta go to Croatia. I gotta go to New Zealand.
We as a podcast have so much traveling that we have in our future. All right, one last one. In one sentence, what do you hope the next generation of park rangers will be known for?
I hope they will be known for what I think national park rangers have been known for decades, and that is to provide the best possible information that they can about the resource that they are working in and the information that visitors need in order to enjoy that resource.
Awesome. Yes, sir. Great answer yet again. Thank you for that.
I have 2 questions.
Go ahead, Travis J.
Is there a age limit for park ranger recruits?
Because Travis was in the Army, so I'm sure he's thinking Army has a bit of.
Well, it depends. As you probably know, there are several different categories of, quote, park rangers. There are park rangers that do law enforcement, and in that category, yes, there are limitations. There are park rangers that do interpretation and provide, manage the visitor centers and provide visitor information. No particular limitation there, but I guess that's the best answer I can give you right now for that.
Well, and as a veteran, don't you get preferential hiring for federal positions, right?
That's what they tell you.
Yeah. There you go.
Oh, and my second.
What's your next one, Travis J?
Because advocacy is such a huge thing right now, and we're trying to get that word out. And I feel like at our podcast, that's kind of where we've steered ourselves, because we started out as, some friends that just loved going out into the middle of nowhere and backpacking, bringing everything we need with us. And it's kind of turned into this love of, our parks and just being outside. And then it turned into protecting it and conserving it and talking to those people. other than doing what we're doing now and getting folks on like you, Bill, what else do you think we could do as a podcast to help that effort?
Well, I'll leave it the way I do every other time, and that is do every damn thing you can do to get the American public engaged with the effort to, number one, turn around what's happening right now, and number two, do what they can to perpetuate and support the agency that they seem to think is the best agency in the federal government, and get that message out.
Hell yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Brad, you have anything else, man?
No, I'm good. I mean, I have a million questions, but
Jeez, so
I'm
do
good.
I. Bill, I know you've done about 400 press conference or pressers before us, but I got a feeling we're gonna ask you back on because I guess I'm just curious. Yeah, and I guess I'm just curious as we go through the next 2 years or 3 years of this administration and see what I'd be interested to see you after this administration and kind of see where we're sitting at that point, like a follow-up as to, all right, how are we feeling now? What's been dismantled? What are we, that kind of stuff. It's going to be super interesting. But Bill, I think I can speak for us and all of our listeners around the world that you have been an amazing conversationalist. We absolutely appreciate your time, taking your time out from all the other pressers that you're doing to spend your time with us is absolutely amazing. And we thank you so much. And do you want to give that website for the ANPR to become a member? Will you give that one more time?
Yes, it's www.anpr/join. And once you do that, there are pages that you can use to donate to ANPR or join as a member and get other information.
Beautiful. You hear listeners, become a member, donate your money. Let's all do what we can to make sure that these systems are available for every generation coming in the future. Good Lord, let's do it. Thank you very much, Bill. We appreciate your time yet again. And I hope you have a great rest of your evening and a great rest of the year. And I hope you stay on as executive director if you want and if you can.
Hey, guys, I have to tell you, this has been one of the most joyful experiences I've had with the media.
We are not the media.
I know that, but I wouldn't argue that way. But the point is, this has been fun.
Yeah, that's what we wanted.
I've enjoyed working with you all. I hope that we have an opportunity to do it again. If you all have any other questions for me at any time or want to do this again at some point, I would be most happy to be involved.
Oh, we would too.
Absolutely.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Bill. And we'll definitely.
I'm going to drink like 12 more beers tonight because you said that.
We're going to get you back on. Thank you so much.
If I ever were able to get together with you all, beers would be on
all
me.
right.
Hey,
hell yeah.
All right. You
We
got
gotta
it,
get out to
man.
Minnesota.
That sounds awesome. Damn right. Thank you very much, Bill. You have a great rest of your evening, brother. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Talk
Take
to you
care.
later.
All righty.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Keep on sauntering.
Bye.
See ya.